an already menacing refugee crisis. Andrew Mitchell is a Conservative MP, was the International Development Secretary between 2010 and 2012. I asked him whether the international community should work with the Taliban.
I think the relationship with the government of Afghanistan, which is now, de facto the Taliban, has to be one that is engaged in by the international community in full and not just bilaterally by Britain and by other individual countries. And it needs to be a relationship that is based on the carrot and the stick, so that if the Taliban respect the human rights of women and people in their country, then we can engage, and the IMF and all the Bretton Woods institutions can engage with the Taliban. But it needs to be, as I say, on the basis that if they do the right thing and respect rights, then we can work with them. And if they don't, we can't. But the carrot and stick approach is the right approach, because we need to give them a very strong incentive to do so. Otherwise, all the structures that have been built up in Afghanistan over the last 2 decades, and they are more significant, I think, than are recognized, will collapse.
The head of the central bank has warned of a deterioration of the economy pretty swiftly, and he particularly picks up on a couple of points. One was international reserves, which are currently frozen by the Americans. Would you unfreeze those?
Well, I would, as part of an overarching policy. But the Taliban need to be able to display, at least to a limited extent, that there is something in it for the people they govern. And otherwise, the position is going to become completely impossible for them. They're going to face starvation and other difficulties which they will not want to take place. And that underlines the importance of a heavily contractual relationship with the international community, but one where we must all stick together. And also, there's a likelihood now, if things go badly wrong, of literally millions of people streaming across the borders into Pakistan and Iran. That would be a calamitous set of circumstances affecting the lives of millions of people on both sides of the border. And that's something that it's in no one's interest, including the Taliban, should take place. This has been an ocean-going disaster for the West and for NATO and for the international community at large. And the fact is that the Taliban are there, and we've got to wrestle with the circumstances which now present themselves to us. You have to remember that the relationship which we as a country have with Afghanistan is a relationship with their people. And if, as a result of our actions, those people starve or flee across borders and into Europe and maybe ultimately to Britain, that is not in our interests. It's not in their interests. And we should do everything we can back there to stem it.
The government's reaction to the Taliban advance and the fall of Kabul came in for some pretty heavy criticism over the last few days, not least in the Commons yesterday. In particular, the Foreign Secretary is getting it in the neck from various quarters because of a report in the Daily Mail today that he refused to call his Afghan counterpart on Friday, despite being advised to by Foreign Office officials. What do you make of that and how he has acted in the past few days?
I think he's in an extremely difficult position. This is an unprecedentedly difficult time to be Foreign Secretary. And I'm sure that he is working hard now to ensure that the aims that the whole of the international community should share, and where Britain has a big role in trying to convene and get those views and actions together, I'm sure he is working hard on that.
You do think that there's a convening role for Britain, even after, the way that we had to leave?
Yes, we are one of the permanent 5 members in the Security Council of the United Nations. We're the leading figure in NATO, and we've expended enormous amounts of blood and treasure in Afghanistan over the last 2 decades. So we have the knowledge, but we also have the role internationally, and we must exert every sinew we possibly can to try and get the international community now to engage and to ensure that in this desperate situation, we focus on the plight of the poor people who are now in such peril and danger.
Andrew Mitchell, in an interview